Wall Street's $2 trillion landlord bet is getting crushed with property values, but it's also creating opportunity. How's it going, everyone? My name is John Howard. In this video today, I'm going to actually talk about the Wall Street landlord, basically the institutional investors that have been buying up single-family homes all across the country and their $2 trillion bet, and how this $2 trillion bet is actually how it's getting crushed with property values. What's funny is this post I did on LinkedIn got quite a bit of attention at this point, about probably 114 or 115,000 impressions, and people are saying it's actually part of the pruning process. But regardless, at the end of the day, Wall Street institutional investors, whether we like it or not, have bought up a lot of single-family homes. Obviously a ton of single-family homes, since 2020. And they're doing pruning of their portfolio, and they bought up about $2 trillion worth of them, right? So that's kind of what's going on. Institutional investors made a massive bet on American housing during the pandemic. The bet is now unraveling. The property value losses in 2025 for them are staggering. In Miami-Dade County, institutional buyers acquired 12,000 properties at an average of $520,000. Today, Zillow estimates these to be worth about $465,000. That's a $660 million loss, or $660 million of losses in a single county. Austin is even worse. Institutional investors bought 6,500 homes at an average of $475,000. Zillow estimates these current values to be about $380,000. A $95,000 per unit loss, totaling about $617 million in equity destruction. Unlike mom and pop landlords, institutional investors and the Wall Street landlord face shareholders and quarterly earnings targets. Wells Fargo recently sent notices to 3 major real estate funds requiring additional equity contributions due to loan to value covenants. What that means is if the loan to value is getting too high, they need to send in money so as to keep the property. Loan to value covenant breaches. Bank of America quietly reduced credit lines for 2 institutional buyers by a combined $800 million. Invitation Homes is now exploring strategic alternatives for portions of their portfolio, aka we need to sell. Progress Residential has listed over 2,000 properties in the past 6 months. American Homes for Rent has suspended acquisitions. According to Federal Reserve data, total institutional exposure to residential real estate now exceeds $2 trillion, double the exposure from the 2008 crisis. As these sophisticated players scramble to minimize losses, they may be creating buying opportunities that haven't existed since 2012. Active for sale listings are up 15% year over year, with significant inventory coming from institutional sellers who bought at the pandemic peak. Markets like Texas now have 134,000 homes for sale, which is way above their long-term average. Properties that sold for $450,000 at peak are now listing for $380,000, and will settle, or may settle, somewhere closer to $350,000 or lower. Wall Street's mixed calculation is becoming Main Street's opportunity, everybody. So there you go. That's what's happening with the Wall Street landlord and institutional investors. Some of the pushback I'm seeing on my LinkedIn post is basically saying that this is a normal part of their pruning process. And that's fine. I mean, I get that. Obviously, if they any savvy investor, no matter how big or small you are, should know that you basically let your winners run and you trim your losers. And I'm fine with that. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. But the reality is it hasn't really been that long that institutional investors and Wall Street, has started buying up single family residences, and it's net. I'm not really sure at the time of this recording if net is a good thing, right? I mean, I think it's a good thing if you're in a situation where you have to sell and there's all these Wall Street buyers that'll buy your house, but in general, it's not very good for families certainly young people who've been priced out of the market and want to start families. I mean, it's very difficult for that, and also it's not very good for small-time investors because they get priced out as well, or they're paying artificially high prices. The reality is, because this hasn't existed, these institutional investors buying up single-family residences like they have since 2020 and maybe a little bit before that. What happens is when they go to sell and they're trimming their portfolios, they're selling in mass quantities. And then one of my other videos I've done recently is talking about how 2 million, short-term rental properties are supposed to hit the market in the next 2 years. So let's say in 2026 and 2027. So the thing is that this is a lot of selling, right? So whether or not Wall Street's going to continue to buy single-family residences, which they actually shouldn't, another piece of content that I did, I haven't done a video on it yet, but apparently there's 22 states that are putting massive restrictions on Wall Street and institutional investors from buying houses, so that it's more sensible for families to come in and actually buy the houses. Which I don't know what you think, but I think that's actually a great thing. But it does look like, Wall Street and the institutional investors are shifting their focus a little bit, in the sense that what they're doing is they're not doing build to rent. So instead of buy to rents, buying single family homes and then renting them, they're building, right? So they're partnering with home builders, and then they're, doing they're a bulk buyer, right? So they're partnering with home builders and they're building to rent as opposed to buying to rent, which still will have an effect. I mean, that's actually better than, buying up all the houses from, bidding up prices and preventing families from, or young couples from starting families, or young families from being able to move in. But regardless, I mean, that's what's happening. And I think that even if it is part of their regular pruning or trimming process, that's still going to be a lot. Like if you have, a bunch of different, areas in the country where they have exposure in that particular area did not perform very well, you basically are going to be in a situation where they're selling mass quantities. In fact, another piece of content which I talked about, where the 22 states are actually banning it. I mean, in that it's like basically there's like 500 areas in our country where the institutional exposure is 9% of that particular area, which is fairly significant, if you think about that, because the overall ownership of Wall Street and institutional investors is only about 2%. So if you go up to 9%, that's like almost 5 times the exposure, in certain areas. So the point is if they have certain levels of exposure and then they go in and it's a bad performing area and they're selling off all the properties, it's going to, drastically lower the values with all that selling pressure in those areas. And that's on top of the 2 million properties that are going to be hitting the market in 26 and 27, which are underperforming or average to under average performing short-term rentals that people are going to be selling, right? So, okay, everybody, if you like that video, if you like this sort of content, you could consider giving the video a like. You could also consider subscribing to the channel. Basically, a little bit about me. I have been doing short and midterm furnished rentals for literally the last 20 years, the last 2 decades. And during that time, I actually launched and operated 4 different businesses that all went up to 7 figures per year. I say that because, that's kind of part of my experience. Also, I was able to own and operate 5 different short-term and midterm furnished rentals, during that whole time. So it's something that, people can definitely do alongside of a busy career, or in the event that you're a high-earning executive. And the reality is that if you want to basically acquire furnished rentals, real estate for rental, it's a high earner is actually really best suited to do it. And the reason that is because as a high earner, you're much more likely to be able to actually qualify for the mortgage. I mean, if you're not a high earner, you don't have really great credit, it does make it harder, but you can work with partners to do that. But basically for me, I actually did not have an exit during my entrepreneurial career, right? So the different businesses that I did not have an exit, but I held on to my properties. So fast forward to now, I actually have 3 properties here in Southern California. And in general, they average from 10 to, let's say, 38,000 per month. Very nice property value. Like the values are about, probably $3 million. And then I was able to get very good mortgages. So refi into 2.875% 30-year fixed mortgages during the pandemic. So the reality is that real estate is the sure thing. A business is the big thing, but real estate is the sure thing. So it is fairly sensible to, consider doing something like, investment property alongside of other things. And I think something else is that with short and midterm furnished rentals, you're basically, at least I am, and for the past 20 years, I've seen about 2 to 3 times what you would see in long-term unfurnished rates. So it's just, in general, it's much higher average monthly income and much higher rates than long-term unfurnished rates. And something that's great about a real estate investment or investment property investment is it's really the only investment that I know of out there where you actually get multiple benefits. With each investment, 6 to be specific, right? So those benefits are appreciation, of course. Case-Shiller index is 309%. Home price appreciation from 1995 to 2025. Now, if you factor in a 10% down payment, that ends up being really a 3,090% return, which is 31x, which actually beats Warren Buffett by 10x. During that same time period, which Warren Buffett doubles the S&P 500. The S&P 500 was 1,080% during that same time frame, and then also the Nasdaq was the next highest performer at 2,111. So 21x for the Nasdaq. So you're beating the Nasdaq and Warren Buffett by 10x with just home price appreciation. The next is rental income and cash flow, and then the third is amortization, which I think is actually probably one of the best benefits because it's guaranteed. You're guaranteed to spend money to live and exist as a human, and you're also guaranteed that if you pay the mortgage down, every dollar you pay down will actually be equity that you're producing. The fourth is basically you get the ability to borrow against the equity of the property as time goes on to hopefully buy more property, and then the fifth is actually tax benefits. So there's a tremendous amount of tax benefits that you get through depreciation. And then also you've got to qualify for material participation, but then you can actually, write off the actual losses and any expenses against regular W-2 income as a tax benefit. And then the sixth benefit is that if you, you kind of setting yourself up to pay off a property over 30 years so that you can retire in a paid off property. So there you go, everybody. So if you, again, you like this video and you like this, you could consider liking the video. You could also consider subscribing to the channel. You can take a look. If you're someone that's interested in real estate investing, you can look at the links on the video. I've got something called the SMTR Launch Kit. Very basic, very simple, also very inexpensive, but it's actually rather long. It's over 60 pages, actually might even be close to 100 pages, of really how to launch a short and medium-term rental. So SMTR for short and medium-term rental launch kit. I also have very inexpensive and basic email coaching if, again, you're somebody that maybe wants to work with an expert to kind of, help you along in your journey. And if you're not interested in real estate investing, but maybe you know somebody that is, you could forward them this video in the event that they want to check it out. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. In fact, I encourage you to put any questions that you may have in the comments below. Thank you.